Okay, so this is a video which will explain a little bit about how to play Hoff, and specifically Doombringer Hoff. Basically, a lot of this will be based around the Oceanic meta as it currently stands, but most of it would be applicable to Hoffing in any region or with any developments in the metagame. So basically, your job as a Hoff is pretty simple: to stop incoming cappers. The stand is the only point that you can guarantee a capper has to go through. That and their own stand, they're always going to come through this point. And so if your team can cut them off there, there's no way they can cap the flag. Basically, so your role is to stay on or around this flag and make sure that you're alive when the capper comes in, so that you can kill him. And that's a pretty simple role. It's what defense is centered around, that and sniping out. You'll have a roaming D player whose job it is to try and ward off the enemy offense to keep you alive. And I'll get to dealing with enemy offense in a minute, but first I'll look about how you stop cappers. Cappers basically are going to come on a route which can be pretty fast, like up to 400 in some cases on certain maps, and as the stand D player you have to be able to stop them. There are a few tools that you have to stop cappers with, and the first one and the easiest one to learn is Titan ground shotting. Oh, and actually before I go through that, I'd just like to say that the loadout you'll use the chain gun, not the chain cannon, and the Titan. That's pretty simple. You also want the mines, and in terms of perks, you'll be switching between, depending on maps and other factors, in the primary slot, safety third and rage, and in the secondary slot, quick draw and super heavy. So anyway, Titan ground shotting. Basically, the capper comes in, as he hits the flag, shoot him with that. That does, I think, at point blank range, about 600 damage. That's not enough to kill a capper, even a light, whether he's a Pathfinder or a soldier, but it'll often it does a fair amount of damage, makes him an easy sniping target, and it means that he may get knocked off course and otherwise mess up his route. It's easy to do because although the Titan has a pretty small range, it can be fired from, certainly the edge of the flag stand at any maps, and although you do have to account for the slow projectile speed. It's often tempting to go for a mid-air on the capper rather than ground shotting, so as they come in, hit them with the Titan. The Titan has a pretty big hitbox, so it's not that hard to get mid-airs, but it's quite risky. A mid-air will often kill a capper or knock him completely off course, and you should only go for a Titan mid-air if you're absolutely sure you're going to hit it, because if you miss it, you've got to spend ages waiting to reload. It takes almost a second. It doesn't seem that long when you're not under any pressure, but under the pressure of an offense and an incoming capper, that reload takes forever, and it can make the difference between a cap's not getting out and a cap getting out. So in general, learning to ground shot is the first thing you'll learn to do as a Hoff, and in pubs that's basically all you need to get by, and in pugs that's a good start. But it's not the only thing you need to learn. Once you find that you can handle enemy offense and you can ground shot with that, you'll want to move on to more advanced and more powerful tactics. And the first thing to realize with that is this chain gun has the highest DPS of any weapon in the game. It is effectively the most powerful weapon in the game. Although it has spin up time, once you're chaining, you never have to stop to reload, and the bullets do 95 damage per hit. Also, just as a note, the chain cannon, although it does more damage, actually has lower DPS, so in general there's really no reason to use the chain cannon, I mean. So basically, once you know how to aim with the chain gun, which is a thing that's very important to practice. If you can't chain properly, you might as well not bother. So once you can chain properly, learn to start chaining Kappas as they come in. So as they, for instance on Drydock, they'll often roll down this hill, and as they roll down the hill, get your chain on them, and you can, I find that you can usually, even if you're not hitting all the time, you can usually put at least about 400 damage on a Kappa as they come in, and then once they reach a certain point, once they're a second or two out, like for instance maybe about when they sort of reach the edge of the stand on Drydock, you'll switch to the Titan and ground shot them as they come in. Basically, once you do that, like if you manage to hit most of your chain and get the Titan on them, they'll usually die. And if they're a Pathfinder, if they're soldier capping, then it's a little bit more work, but you can usually put a fair amount of damage on them using those techniques. So you chain them as they enter, and if they get out, especially if they get out fairly slowly, you can also chain them out on exit, because you can put a fair bit of damage on them like that and reduce, and perhaps make the difference between your sniper being able to hit them and kill them and hit them and leave them with a sliver of health. Once you can chaining on entry and exit is pretty important, and although like in my personal experience when I started playing Hoff, I didn't use the chain gun a lot because it's easy, it feels easier and feels like I'm doing more if I'm hitting something with a lot of damage in one shot with the Titan. But in actuality, you'll find that the chain gun in a lot of ways is a superior weapon, and basically you should be using the chain gun most of the time. The only time you'll use the Titan is when ground shotting a Kappa, or in very rare situations when dueling offense. And then the final and the most important thing about basic Hoffing is to body block. When the Kappa's coming in, they're going pretty fast, and there's not all that much other than perhaps your Titan to stop their momentum. So what you can do is you can use your body. If they hit you, if the Kappa comes in and they hit your body, they'll lose all of their speed. If you're running super heavy, they'll also take damage. But even if you're running quick draw or something else, they still lose all their speed, and in a lot of ways that's as good as killing them, because if they don't have any speed, they're not going to get out. Learning to body block can be quite difficult in that you have to learn how to position yourself and how to not get knocked out of the way by a spin fuser shot or a proxy grenade or a nitron. And generally what you'll find is that you want to body block them after they have the flag. A lot of people, especially in pubs, will go and fly up to the Kappa as they're coming in, which can work, and often you'll find that your roaming D or even your sniper may do this, and it can block them before they get the flag and ruin their route. But once if you miss the body block here, then you have to turn around and tighten them, and often you won't be able to do that by the time they've gotten out, and effectively you've given them a free grab, which you don't want to do. So what you'll want to do is instead sort of wait back a little bit back from the flag for them, and they'll grab the flag, maybe hit them with the Titan, and then they'll run straight into you, and they'll lose all their momentum, and they'll either K out or just try to keep going. But once at that point, either use the Titan or switch to the chain gun and just chain them out, and your sniper shouldn't have any trouble hitting them at this point either. So that's basically how you stop an incoming Kappa. It sounds pretty simple, but basically it's just something you learn. You just practice in pubs. To practice body blocking, it's good to use super heavy, just in pubs. Just use it because you know when you've body blocked, you get that tactile feedback and the splat sound. But it's a good tool for learning how to body block, but it's not necessary to use in comp situations. Although in some cases you would use it. So basically, yeah, just practice a lot. The better you get with the chain gun, the better you'll be able to hit Kappas on the way in, the more damage you'll be able to put on them, and consequently the less they'll get out. The second part of this is dealing with enemy offense, because only in very rare situations are you going to be able to just be at your leisure, ready to stop the Kappa with no enemy offense attacking you. Usually there'll be 2 or even 3 enemy offense. On a lot of maps that means even 3 juggernauts, rarely now raiders, but occasionally you'll have a raider and an inf, and occasionally an inf as well. So you have to watch out. The first thing to do is, if they've got juggernauts, the first thing juggernauts will do is they'll stand away from you, and what's called LRS, long range spam. They'll shoot mortars and MIRVs at the stand. Basically at this point it's not worth trying to engage them, and it's not usually worth your roaming trying to engage them. Instead, just avoid their mortars. Basically, just the mortars can only cover a certain area of the flag stand, and just stand away and make sure they don't hit you, which is easier said than done. But just adapt to the enemy offense. The enemy offense will be timed so that they come in at about the same time as the capper. They'll usually start to come in when the capper's 10 to 15 seconds out. This is important because if you haven't spotted the capper and the offense start coming in, assuming they're a team who knows what they're doing and aren't just poorly organised, that usually means you should be looking for a capper. There's going to be one coming in pretty soon. If the enemy offense comes in early and the capper isn't there ready for you, then what you should do is, you shouldn't leave the stand as such, but you should punish the enemy offense for doing that. If they come in, just duel them out, and your chain gun will usually be able to beat them, especially at a distance from, say, a jug. In a one-on-one duel, a Doombringer will always beat a jug, assuming the Juggernaut doesn't get any discs on him, because they're basically, even with perfect, if both parties have perfect aim, the chain gun beats the X1 in terms of more damage and not having to reload. So if you can keep them at enough of a distance that they can't easily hit you with the throwing disc, you can usually beat them. And if they've come in too early, you should just be able to kill them out and get ready for the capper. When they come in too late, then just don't worry about it. Don't even attack them. Just stand there, tank the damage, or maybe hide if you don't think you're able to survive, and you'll be alive to stop the capper, because they won't have enough time to kill you before the capper comes in. So yeah, basically the rule of thumb is that you should only be dueling the enemy offense when you know the capper is not coming in the immediate future. So if the capper's 15 seconds or 10 seconds out, and you know this, don't engage the enemy offense unless you think you can kill them within the next couple of seconds. Then basically, yeah, if they do come in early, kill them, and your roaming D should be hopefully alive to assist you with that. The roaming D will often go out further to try and kill or damage the offense as they come in, and they may tell you that they're whatever half health jug there, and you should focus your fire on him, because basically in a lot of ways it's better to have one full health jug attacking you than two low health jugs, because the low health jugs will be able to put double the damage on you that one can. And so if you manage to get one low and kill it, then you've only got one to worry about, and it's not as big a problem. Right, so the second thing is that if the enemy offense is coming in and your roaming's dead, or you're not going to be able to survive long enough to kill the flag, one of the things you can do is hide. And this is very map dependent, but just trying to find any cover you can. Dry dock is pretty bad for this, because there aren't too many hiding places near to the flag. But for example, this box is your friend. You can use it to just sort of dodge around the enemy. The less damage they can put on you, the better. Just hide. On other maps there are specific places where you can hide from the enemy offense, and then basically when your sniper tells you, or you realise that the capper is 5 seconds out, you should at that point go back to the flag and get ready to chain them out and tighten them. If, say, the enemy offense comes in and you're fairly full health and you're on the flag, and you find that the capper is 5 seconds out or so, usually you can just tank the damage. So just ignore the enemy offense. Hopefully they won't be able to kill you within a short enough time frame. But this is another way in which the chaining is good, because even if you get killed before they get to the flag, if you've used the chain, then you've at least put some damage on them. Otherwise they might get out completely full health, and that makes it a much tougher job for your sniper. in general, dealing with enemy offense is not easy, and you have to adapt to what they're doing. This video isn't really long enough to cover a lot of specific situations, but basically the best thing you can do is just practice, play a lot of pugs, and eventually you'll sort of learn, you'll just sort of develop an intuition as to when you should be dueling enemy offense, and when to hide and tank damage, and when to do basically, and having good clear communications with your roaming is a major factor in this, because if you don't know how many enemies there are still alive or whether they're full health, then basically you can get surprised on the stand. And that is really the other major part of being a HOF, is communicating with your team. Communicating with your roaming D is generally consisted of your roaming deal, say on dry dock, maybe an enemy jug spotted low or high, so you know what direction they're coming from, and they'll tell you when they're dead, and they'll tell you that there's one low who's going to be easy to chain out. Basically, their job is to report to you on the state of the enemy offense and whether they're succeeding in killing them or not. But perhaps more importantly, and just another note on that is, if you die and your roaming's alive, his job is to take over the stand for you until you get back. So you make sure that's always clearly known. But communicating with your sniper is another major point that is vital to being a HOF. Your sniper is probably the main person who'll be doing spotting of cappers, but it's not entirely his job. You have to do it too, as the HOF. So often what you'll work out with your sniper beforehand, or if you're in a team, just to try that in practice, to divvy up the different routes that the cappers are going to be running into who spots what. So on dry dock, your sniper's probably going to be sitting up there or whatever, so he has a good vantage point to see the high routes coming. And so you'll say that, okay, so your sniper will spot high and you can spot low because they're very visible coming over that ridge. And so in general, that's where you look and that's where your sniper looks, and when one spots them, you give us a rough estimate of how long they're going to be out. That said, that doesn't mean you should ignore the highs, or your sniper should ignore the lows. If they see one, they should still tell you and try to give an estimate of timing. Because if you can't spot the cappers, there's no way to stop them getting out. It's a fact. If you don't spot them until they're 5 seconds out, then unless they're doing badly and their offense is ill-organised, you're almost never going to stop them. So spotting the cappers early is key. And then secondly, with your sniper, and to an extent the rest of your team, when a capper gets out, you have to make a call. You have to say, the capper is out full health, 3/4 health, half health, or low, and then say whether an E grab is necessary, as an emergency grab. So basically tell your offense how fast he's going, whether he's going to make it back to the flag before your capper gets there. And so basically tell them whether they need to grab or not. Because if they don't know whether they need an E, then they'll just sit there and usually die and without the clear communication, there's no way that your team's going to be able to stop them from capping. So make sure your team knows how. Often they'll ask how out is he going to get home? Can you put chain on him? Is your roaming going to be able to chase him down? Is he going to be sniped out? Because if he's not, then your team needs to do something about it, and that's a call you should make immediately after a capper gets out, and make sure your team know that. That's basically it for this video. The other important part of playing D is standoffs, when both teams have the flags at each other's bases, but that's a topic that would have to be covered in another video, I think, because there's a lot of it's a pretty complex subject in and of itself. So for now, that's basically all. But in order to learn more, you should. I'm planning to do a second video follow-up to this, which will explain more map-specific things like mine placements, specific little bits about specific maps where you can hide, and places you can stand, where cappers are going to be coming from. So look out for that, and also if you can have a look, take the time to take a look at some of the other guides on the internet to hoffing, specifically by certain American players, and I think Titan and M-Star both have really good resources that online, which I'll provide a link to, which explain a lot of mine placements and basic little tips and tricks about being a hoff. And yeah, watch as much as you can, practice in pubs as much as you can, and you'll be better. In fact, in a lot of ways, if you're not so good with the chain gun, then it's worth just playing TDMing with the chain gun until you're confident you can hit with it consistently, because basically you'll be able to destroy in a duel with the chain gun if you know how to use it properly. So practice that a lot, although that might get you a bit of hate in pubs because it's not a very honourable way to fight, but it works and it's something you need to practice if you're going to be a good hoff. Practice body blocking, that's pretty easy. If you can find a pub where there are a couple of enemy cappers, just practice. Don't even go for the Titan shot, just use super heavy and just chain them and body block them, and don't put down mines unless there are some routes you're not looking at in a pub, and just practice solely chaining them out and body blocking them. And yeah, basically just keep practicing. That's the ultimate thing. Play a lot of pugs. The pugs are also helpful for developing an intuition and developing team knowledge, like how to communicate with members of your team, what to say, when, and just generally how to be a good hoff.